slide things in during the live shows.
Time after time.
Right? It's like we can make these show notes. Man, they can have image cues.
He
would have told us if we weren't. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, do we need to keep talking?
Keep talking?
We can't hear
you. We need to know if we're focused because Brad walked in front of the camera.
Yeah, you're live.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, we're on.
Yes.
Oh.
You're on.
Don't see the.
Welcome to the Red Web.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Red Web.
Always hear you, Gavin. So that's that kind of threw us because we don't see our screen at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the Red Web.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Red Web, your comic book superhero culture talk show with your host Brad West, Anastasia Anderson, and Mr. Greg Burrow. Greg is, of course, here on behalf of Dragon's Lair Comic and Fantasy on Anderson Lane. Make sure you check them out. We very much appreciate them loaning Greg and his fabulous superhero expertise with us. He's also my partner in crime fighting and volunteer work as well. This is my partner in everything else, Bo, who does appear on here every once in a while. So, yeah, Bo West. Today, our topic is the New Mutants, Marvel's New Mutants. We're going to go from the comic book origins to give you some background and interesting factoids in the stories and all of the dish and drama that you get with superheroes here on the Red Web. And then we're going to give you a review of the movie that we have seen, and we hope by now that you have seen. If you have not seen it yet, we'll give you a fair chance to bail out when we get there so there's no spoilers. And as a bonus, stick around at the end. Bo is actually going to help us course correct. If y'all remember last year around this time, we did the Phoenix Spotlight episode. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it with us then, and he is a huge X-Men fan. That's his thing, and he was very disappointed he couldn't join us for the Phoenix. So he's going to help correct some of my mistakes that I made. So if you really want to stick around and see Brad have to eat crow, then do that over there. So
also, we're going to be talking about bringing comics to the movies, and how some did it really great and some didn't do it so well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
If we don't, yeah. So let's start off with the comic book origins of the New Mutants. By now, I hope that the World Lexicon is familiar, at least in some part, with X-Men. Thanks to the 2000 movie and the veritable cascade of spin-offs that have happened since then. But even though there are tons of X-Men comic book spin-offs now, at any given time there's like 6 or more titles. The New Mutants was the first. It was the first X-Men comic book spin-off team. And it came to be in Marvel graphic novel number 4. At the time, they wrote it because one of the creators had gotten married. And rather than release them on schedule as planned, they just collected them together as a prestige format graphic novel. So Marvel graphic novel number 4 of September of 1982 introduces the New Mutants, along with the subsequently following New Mutants #1. Now, the cool thing, the first fun fact about this is the name. When Stan Lee and had first created the Mutants, or created the X-Men, when he first created the X-Men, they were originally going to name it just called The Mutants. That was the original title of the books. It's just The Mutants. But the editors at Marvel didn't feel like the general reading public was either smart enough or educated enough or in the know enough to know what a mutant was or to understand the concept of a mutant. Not kidding.
Jack Kirby.
It was Jack Kirby and the editors. I think they got Jack Kirby to convince him.
Yeah.
They had to get him
But
to
it came
convince
down to the term mutant was not a common enough phrase in our cultural lexicon at the time that they didn't figure people would understand what it was. So they then suggested the name X-Men, or eventually made their way to the name X-Men. We should
And I think
probably
that we
say.
all have to thank Chris Claremont because his run on X-Men made X-Men so freaking popular that they said we need a spin-off, and so Chris Claremont created the New Mutants.
Yeah,
as a
he was responsible for some of the most influential storylines of the. I mean, if you watch the '90s X-Men animated series, like 75% of that is Chris Claremont's story work.
Yeah,
if not more. Gambit, and those characters that came along, Jubilee and all that stuff, that was his run. So yeah, the New Mutants was the spinoff. Now at this point in the comic books, they had graduated to older characters. We had, if you were around for our episode a few weeks back about them not letting people grow up, X-Men was one of the few instances where the characters were allowed to age a little bit.
Well, not just X-Men. Marvel has a better habit of letting them age, but in this case, let's focus on the X-Men.
Yeah, on the X-Men. And so the Teen Titans was DC Comics' answer to the X-Men. They had a teen characters, and so Teen Titans with George Perez advanced into the new Teen Titans and introduced Cyborg and Starfire and Beast Boy and Raven. And it became so popular that the X-Men, that Marvel decided to up their game, and they created the Giant Size X-Men. So Giant Size X-Men #1 introduced a more diverse group of characters.
It's where you get one of my all-time favorite characters, Nightcrawler. That's where, of course, they introduced Storm, Colossus.
I think we skipped. But the homage to the original name, The Mutants, by this point in time, X-Men had gotten popular enough that everybody knew what a mutant was. So they decided, in homage to the original name of the X-Men team, that's why they called it New Mutants. We kind of got ahead of ourselves.
That's true.
It happens here. It's live TV, guys. You know what I'm talking about.
But yeah, so Giant Size X-Men #1, you get the first group of diversity. Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus. You actually had Sunspot, who was the...
So yes, Marvel went global with the new X-Men.
Japanese.
Sunspot is Japanese.
Sunspot is Japanese. Thank you. Why is everyone just staring at me while I'm asking?
You turned that way and whispered, but I didn't hear what you said. I wasn't staring at you. So basically, they were older. The original X-Men disappeared. Professor X is like, hey, I've been keeping tabs on these other mutants in other countries, that they're older and they're already more experienced with their powers.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. The original X-Men hadn't disappeared. Well, not 100% wrong.
They
had gone missing on a mission, and Xavier got Cyclops to help him recruit the international mutants that he had found to save the original X-Men.
This is the hair. This is the split. Okay, moving on. So, because they had mostly more aged characters now, they decided that they wanted to keep the original feel of the story with the young heroes, which is originally what the X-Men were. So basically, New Mutants is the next class of young heroes at the school to be trained and stuff. And following the popularity of the international, more diverse group of X-Men from Giant Size X-Men #1, they decided to make a more diverse cast of characters here. Yeah. So you end up getting the new characters. Karma was Vietnamese. Mirage is Native American. Wolfsbane was Scottish.
Sunspot is Brazilian. And Cannonball was
deep in the heartland. Deep heartland country boy American.
Southern American.
Southern American. There you go. And so That was the new original team group following in with that. Then they later added some more important characters. One that you'll find is a linchpin character, Majik, who ties into Giant Size X-Men because Giant Size X-Men introduced the Russian superhero Colossus.
Colossus and Majik are siblings.
And Majik is his younger sister. So,
now, the fun thing about Majik, and by all means, feel free to jump in anytime. The fun thing about Majik is when we say she is Colossus's younger sister, she is a lot younger than she appears. Because when she is first introduced, before she joins the New Mutants, she's only like 9 or 10 years old. And then when she gets kidnapped, and in the couple of months that it takes Colossus to be able to rescue her, and then she gets stuck on the New Mutants, she's been in limbo where time flows differently.
Like literally limbo. She gets kidnapped by a demon to another dimension. We'll touch on that story in a minute.
We'll get there in a sec.
But also...
but then you also get characters like Cypher, who is personally one of my favorites, who unfortunately did not get a lot of love in his original run. And then Warlock, who...
Technically he wasn't a mutant, he was an alien.
He's an alien, correct.
Yes.
He is part of the Phalanx.
So let's skip Firefish for a second and talk about X Factor. So International X-Men went out there to rescue the old X-Men and such. When they came back, they split up. Iceman and Angel formed their own team, the Champions, correct?
That part, yes.
All right. At any rate, so the International X-Men kind of blended in and took over as the X-Men. But
Beast, of course, also went his own way because he joined the Avengers.
Beast joined the Avengers. They kind of went their own ways. But they ended up getting back together and forming a group called X Factor. X Factor was the aged original team. However, their premise was they were pretending to be mutant hunters when they were really going out and bringing them back to safety. Two of their characters were young characters named Rusty Collins, who was known as the hero Fire Fist, and what was Skid's name? Tiffany?
No.
Tabitha.
No,
Tabitha.
Tabitha is Boom Boom.
Which one was Skid?
I honestly don't remember Skid's real name.
I'm sorry, guys. I have a hard time taking the character Skid's.
They only ever call her Skids because her power is she creates a force field.
And everything literally slides off.
Well, it's a frictionless force field. So in some of the issues where they're running away, Skids isn't running away. She's skating away, like ice skating.
She skates on her force
Sally
field.
Levins.
Sally. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, when the X Factor team brings them back and they join the New Mutants,
it does cause a lot of internal animosity.
Yeah. So basically, now at this point in the history of X-Men, you've got 3 teams coexisting and using the X-Mansion.
Right. So now here's one of the big things to remember. There was a lot of animosity between the New Mutants and the X-Men to begin with, even before adding the characters Fire Fist and Skids. So first of all, the X-Men, of course, are still going on missions and everything like that. But giant-sized X-Men, they introduce and lose one of the international, well, not even international at that point, one of the characters named Thunderbird. He died on the very first mission. So when they convinced Xavier to start the new class that they called that the book's titled New Mutants for, he refused to let them go on missions. He would train them, but he did not want to put them in harm's way like he had done with his previous proteges.
So yes, Death of Thunderbird basically made Professor X gun shy, and part of the conflict is that they were jealous. They're like, you know what, you sent the other team out on missions when they were our age. You know, we're not just kids. We have powers. We can do something. We can do more. We can be better. And also the resources and the training and the equipment and stuff. They felt like they had been getting the short end of the deal.
Right? It's like, what's the point of having all these cool toys and all these big promises if they're not going to be able to do anything with them?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that was kind of one of the good dramatic elements of the story. But the next really fun thing that made the New Mutants unique, especially because at this time the original X-Men were going on more cosmic intergalactic missions. You have the Shi'ar Empire, the Brood, the whole Phoenix saga, which we'll get to at the end. So in contrast to their cosmic direction, the New Mutants took a more horror and mystical and magical approach to storytelling and to some more elements.
Which, of course, is why the New Mutants movie had more of a horror element than the past X-Men movies.
Right.
Yeah,
but,
and some of the really cool stories are the Mojoverse. If you get a chance to watch it, intergalactic television mogul who likes to film them doing stuff. What is it? Can you see the board?
Limbo.
Oh, okay. Limbo and Belasco,
and then Asgard.
which is the story that.
So that's the story where you actually get to meet Illyana in the first place in her teenage form, because Belasco is the one who kidnapped Illyana as a baby. He stole portions of her soul to try and gain more power in Limbo.
Okay.
She eventually met alternate reality versions of both Nightcrawler and Storm, who Nightcrawler was not possessed, but taken control of by Belasco. So that version of Nightcrawler was not a good guy, but he's who taught Illyana to use a sword. Then she finds that version of Storm. Well, Storm in that version, she no longer has access to her mutant powers because there's not that she's lost them, but there's not really an environment for her to control. Mm-hmm. And so what a lot of people don't realize is Storm in the main continuity has mystic heritage. Well, in that version of Storm that she encounters takes to that mystic heritage, and she becomes a white witch. So Illyana's learning a little bit from Belasco in the dark magic areas, but at one point, that version of Storm rescues her and starts teaching her some of the white magic, which leads
to the Magique miniseries that's called Magique, Aurora, and Illyana.
Yeah.
Was actually the little name of the title, and gets more of the story, which I personally will bring it up again later. I personally think that's going to happen.
I kind of feel like Magique needs her own episode.
I honestly feel like that. Yeah. I feel like that's going to be the direction of if there was this. But
so after that, then there is the story where the New Mutants do end up in Asgard. And so that's where, at some point, Danny becomes a Valkyrie. Yeah. So
yeah, just so y'all are clear, Psyche / Mirage is the code name. She changed her code name, but it's the code name of Danny Moonstar, who is the second, technically, Native American X-person.
In the Asgard story, poor Storm, I feel bad for her. She loses her powers so frequently. At that point, she is depowered. She is taken over, watching over the New Mutants, and she has taken them away to some secluded island, I forget what island, where they can still train to use their powers, but there is zero possibility that they should be able to end up getting into any kind of trouble. Well, cue Loki. But this is also a story that they bring back Karma for, because by this point, she had been gone for a while. Yeah. When Illyana joined the team, Karma was no longer there.
Yeah, I think that's why she wasn't in the movie, is because she wasn't used as much.
Probably not. So they end up getting kidnapped and whisked away to Asgard, and then Illyana, in an attempt to help them escape, because Illyana's capable of opening portals, tries portaling them all out, but Loki screws with her mutant power, which is the portals, and they get scattered across space and time throughout Asgard. And various things happen. Well, Danny becomes a Valkyrie. One of the other members, Magma, who we forgot to mention earlier, she becomes a fire fairy. Whole convoluted thing. Storm, one of the first times that Storm isn't just perceived as a goddess, but given goddess power, because at this point, Thor was missing in the Avengers books, and Loki had a hammer forged for Storm. Anyways, whole nother thing. But Danny becomes a Valkyrie. They eventually make their way back to Earth. She's the only one that gets to keep any of her Asgard accoutrement, mostly the winged horse, because when Loki's going, well, if I have to send y'all back, you're all going to lose everything y'all picked up while y'all were here. The other Valkyries stepped in and go, no, you cannot separate her from her horse.
Neat.
Put down. So,
and Loki's not stupid enough to mess with the Valkyrie.
I love it.
But one of the most famous and popular storylines was the Demon Bear Trilogy.
Yeah.
Which centered around you want to tell us about Demon Bear Trilogy?
Well, this is going to get into the movie.
Which is the inspiration for the movie.
Yeah.
So
I think we should talk
okay, so we'll hold off on that.
Yeah,
right?
because
We'll
it's
spoiler.
We'll put a date on that one. So yes,
We'll
one of the most influential stories, Demon Bear Trilogy. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also during this time, Emma Frost has created her own team of mutants, and she's trying to recruit.
She's created her own school.
And she's created her own school, yes, a rival to the Xavier Institute. And she creates
what hers is called.
The Westchester Academy. It's wherever the building that the Hellfire Club was in.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And Winchester, Westchester, something like that.
Westchester, because
I think it was the Westchester Academy.
Because the Xavier Institute is located in Westchester.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, she creates her own team, the Hellions, and the Hellions. We'll come back to them a little bit later, but it's the first time you have teenage mutant villains. If you're familiar with the original X-Men comics, even though they were teenagers, their primary rogues galleries, the Brotherhood of Mutants, were already adults.
Magneto, Juggernaut,
Mystique, Toad, all those. So it was an interesting twist up and giving them contemporary adversaries.
And also the mutants were a lot younger.
Yes.
Yes.
They were a lot younger. I mean, we're talking like.
Well, I mean,
12
not really,
15.
because when in 63.
Renee was 13.
In 63, hold on, I've got notes.
Yes, notes.
Because, in 63, when the X-Men were initially introduced, because in the first issue is when they bring Jean Grey into the school.
Iceman was the youngest.
Cyclops, Iceman, Angel, and Beast had already been there. Iceman was the youngest. He was about 12 or 13.
I thought he was 14.
Because while Scott, Beast, and Angel are going, ooh, pretty girl, you got Iceman going, ooh, girls. So he's still a kid.
And originally it was supposed to be ooh, girls are icky. And eventually they used that to change him to gay. But,
But with the New Mutants, I believe Renee was 13. So not necessarily the youngest, not younger than the X-Men, but they were pretty young.
Yeah.
So
the Hellions, being a contemporary to them, were about the same age as the New Mutants.
That's not what I was saying. I was saying that basically the New Mutants were portrayed as younger.
Yeah.
Because, and that added to the whole horror element.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely. It could happen to kids versus just adults.
Whereas with
X-Men,
they were kids, but they weren't really portrayed
Camp Crystal Xavier's Institute.
Yeah, I mean, they were more,
Right, it's like depicting teenagers / young adults in horrific
the
situations
60s.
is a lot different than depicting like 13 to 17-year-olds.
Because while in the originals, they did address some things, but it wasn't until the 70s, 80s that you really started seeing more of the civil aspect of what they were addressing. So by the time the New Mutants came around, it wasn't just that, people are going hunt mutants down and beat them. It's that the adults weren't the only ones dealing with this.
And
the
also,
kids were too.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite panels, I can't even tell you what issue, one of my favorite panels, Illyana actually gets in trouble with the rest of the team because they're out in their civvies, they're at one of the milkshake shops or whatever, and
as kids are wont to do.
Right.
Whatever kids do those days.
This was when Cypher was first with the group. Also, the thing about Cypher, out of all of them, from the original to now, Cypher had 0 combat capability. His powers went nothing to combat.
So just his
power was translation of language. He could hear 2 to 3 syllables of any language, and he instantly knew how to speak it, read it, and write it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's still a handy power.
Oh, it is. And they put it to use, especially in the Asgard story, because at one point, Illyana takes over the Enchantress's castle because she locks her away in limbo for locking her away. And so she puts Doug to work translating all of her spell books.
Oh, yeah.
So he had uses.
He was useful.
But the panel that I always remember, the couple of panels I always remember, they're in a milkshake diner, whatever shop, And you've got the local townies coming around, and they want to start bullying Doug because he's smaller, younger, and, you know, meek, mild, and, you know, we're big, tough jocks. And Ilyana steps up and uses just the slightest hint of black magic. Doesn't actually do anything, but she comes up, stares them down, and in a modern comic, they would have drawn them with wet pants.
She gives them the evil
She gives them the evil eye.
Awesome.
They shiver, they run away, and she grabs Cypher by the collar, runs around the corner, and portals back. And when the rest of the team finds out what happened, because at that point, Xavier has a strict rule of no powers in town.
Yeah.
You know, because they kind of are trying to keep peace with the neighbors.
So there are a lot of amazing storylines and a lot of seeds that grew into many, many storylines and things down the line for the X-Men mythos. But towards the end of the run when they
unfortunately, they're one of the few successful attempts at, hey, let's start a new class.
Yeah. So towards the end of this series, though, ran for 100 issues, and towards the end is when they really started some of the big elements. They brought on artists, I'm tempted to choke every time I say name, Rob Liefeld, who was at that point one of the younger, he wasn't the youngest ever to work for Marvel, but at that time they were really capitalizing on him being a young 18, 19-year-old creator.
Coming.
And they were, trying to really push for fresh artists and such.
Which is where you get Cable, because Liefeld and
Simonson. So yeah, Louise Simonson had been writing
for creating it.
Louise Simonson had been writing the book New Mutants, had taken over duties from the New Mutants from Chris Claremont, because Claremont was focusing on still doing X-Men, and she
trying to take a couple of pokers out of that fire.
Right. So she, along with Rob Liefeld, co-created Cable, a character we're all aware of. Domino made her first appearance. Okay, Domino sort of made her first appearance in New Mutants. We'll explain that one in a second. Shatterstar, the son of longtime X-Men co-member or part-time member, Longshot from the Mojoverse that we talked about earlier. And then Warpath, who is an important character because he was the actual brother
the younger brother of Thunderbird,
who died in Giant Size X-Men #1.
So, here's one of the things I really enjoy about the X-Men franchise overall. They have a habit of being able to pull some of their adversaries over to the side of good. We talked about it last time with Rogue.
Right, it's the theme.
Warpath is another one, because when Warpath showed up, he was coming to get revenge for the murder of his brother. Because his brother went on a mission, his brother died, and no one ever said anything about it.
But
he was upset.
Well, because they didn't want him to know he was a mutant, and they didn't realize that he was going to be a mutant as well. But ultimately, they were able to convince him that his brother died a hero for the greater good, and they appealed to his pride, and he ended up joining them. Now, the reason, and also the big one in number 98 was, of course, Deadpool. Deadpool and Domino both first appeared in New Mutants number 98. And if you don't know who Deadpool is, then you're living under a rock right now.
No, hold on. Deadpool first appeared and died.
Yes.
In issue 98.
He was
never intended to be a remaining character. When I say he died, they didn't just kill him. They chopped him up into little pieces and mailed him back to the person who hired him.
In fact, he was intended to be a one-off.
He was a throwaway character.
Hence them using the copycat name of Slade Wilson from Deathstroke and making him Wade Wilson. In fact, his original mutant powers were not regeneration. It was implied that his powers had something to do with marksmanship and fighting.
Right, just that he was a very good
shot.
Yeah.
I mean, if I remember correctly, he didn't actually have powers when he first showed up.
Like I said, they implied that he was. I mean, they talked about how stupid accurate he was and deadly he was, and that they assumed that was his mutant powers. But in order to explain how he came back from such
years later,
ignominious end, that's how they explained it, is his regeneration power. Now, one of the reasons I said sort of Domino first appeared in New Mutants number 98, we end up having the popularity of New Mutants was enough, and they wanted to give more attention to Rob Liefeld as a creator. This leads to a small feud between Simonson and Liefeld. She did not really care for his style or his style of art or storylines. But they end up canceling the series at number 100, and it transitions into a new team called X-Force.
It's the first incarnation of X-Force. This one is led by Cable.
And Cable, who had just appeared in issue 97.
Yeah, he picks them up, and because at this point, as far as they are concerned, as far as he's concerned, as far as the world is concerned, the X-Men are gone. They're dead. So in the long run, they were abandoned, and he came in and saved them, but he also militarized them. So you went from a group of students that are supposed to be learning to use their powers, and when they get into trouble, they can defend themselves. He turns them into an almost military-like unit.
And remember, Cable, if you've seen the second Deadpool movie, you know this too, comes from a dystopian future. And just like that in the comic books as well, he comes from a dystopian future. We're not even going to get into the story about why he came back in the first time in the comic books. That's a whole other one.
He's another one that would need his own
episode. We should do time travel. That's what.
Of course, here's the thing. He's a Summers. The Summers need their own episode in general.
Okay.
Right? That would be a fun separate episode to do.
But
I'm sorry, the Summers would be a whole season.
Right. They should just make a series or a mini-series just revolving around that.
Right, I know. I would read and or watch that.
Yeah, it's like,
so
let us know if you want us to talk about all their kids.
By all means, we can talk about that family tree. Because let me tell you.
Hope you're talking about.
Yeah. So during the first storyline of the X-Force series, which took over for New Mutants, you find out that Domino was not really Domino at all. Domino was actually another character named Copycat who has very similar powers and appearance to Mystique. I call her Weak Mystique. She's like a less powerful version of Mystique. And
she's actually been in 2 movies.
Well, hold on. Yes, we're going to get to that fun spoiler. Now, the interesting thing about Copycat that's different than her than Mystique, she actually has the ability to not just take on the appearance, but the memories of who she transforms to. Whereas Mystique can turn into anybody she sees. Copycat can only do one at a time because she has to touch the person. She has to come into contact with the person that she's copying. But and in addition to taking on their appearance, she can actually access their memories, which makes her a great, in a way, a better infiltrator. And you find out that the real Domino had been taken prisoner by her, and they had to go rescue the real Domino. So that's where the fun, like I said, Domino sort of appears first time. There's debate as to which is the real first appearance of Domino, if it's in New Mutants or if it's X-Force. And the last thing in the real comic book, and we can touch on some common things, but after that, because of the popularity of the cartoon, the X-Men animated series, and the character of Jubilee, who had been introduced in X-Men at that point, Jubilee got her own team as the next class.
Yeah, they tried doing a whole new, let's do a new class of mutants.
And that was Generation X.
Yeah.
Comic book. So Jubilee got her own new Generation X comic book.
But of course, once again, at that point, Xavier was wherever Xavier wasn't dead.
I think he was up with Alondra because he was in space and he was able to walk.
But so at that point, the Xavier Institute was now being run by Banshee and Emma Frost. So this is where we start seeing Emma as a good guy.
Yeah, her first crossover. And she even brought some of her. Yeah.
And so they introduce a bunch of characters, and this is kind of where you start to learn that Cannonball's family has a high mutation rate, because this is where we reintroduce his sister Paige. And then they bring in a bunch of other characters.
Wait, hold on. Was Paige Lifeguard?
No, Paige was Husk.
Paige was Husk.
Husk was kind of ew.
Oh yeah,
because she ripped her skin off. Yes, she ripped her skin off to reveal whatever the power was underneath it, because it wasn't always the same power.
She had constantly evolving powers, so
it was gross. At one point, though, they did a really interesting story with her, and when it was the Jean Grey School and Wolverine was running it, because her power was actually starting to drive her nuts. And it got really weird. She eventually had to husk her skin so many times to get back to her core person to help herself figure out what was going on. Yeah. It was really kind of interesting.
This looks less horrifying now that I see reference.
Yeah, but you can only just imagine.
Never mind.
You can only just imagine.
So much for less horrifying.
Yeah, you can only imagine if it were in a movie, they'd be using the CG that we got on Lovecraft Country.
Right.
Oh my God.
In fact, when I first saw that,
it's possible.
Yes.
When I first saw that, that's what I thought. That's one of the things I thought about.
And one of the things about the New Mutants that I think that is important to bring up is that the roster kept on changing on a very rapid pace.
Yes.
Like I think the 7th issue is when Karma disappears, and then
a couple of issues later, 13 or 14.
14,
yeah.
And then it was just like a whole bunch.
A really interesting factoid. If you got a chance to watch our Some Like It Hot episode, if you haven't, it's on the website, bradsredweb.com. Go ahead and check it out. It's super fun. And we talked about fire powers and how elemental powers are a really common one to reuse. Well, fiery powers are very common amongst the mutants. In addition to Sunfire, who we talked about on first introduced and previously mentioned Giant Size X-Men, the New Mutants introduced a character named Sunspot, who had a solar-based powers. But then they add additionally to the group later on a character named Magma, who has lava fire powers.
Which, sticking with the international theme, Magma was Greek.
Was Greek?
Yes, she was Greek.
I didn't know that.
And her powers weren't just fire. The reason she was called Magma is because she had the ability to control magma
and pull it from the earth.
Yeah, she could create.
But she was still a hot chick.
Yes, she was still a hot chick.
In fact, at the same time, Emma Frost, right before Emma Frost took over Gen 13 or Gen X, I want to say Gen. Right before she took over Generation X, and she was still an adversary of the New Mutants and running the Hellions, they introduced Firestar, who we also talked about on the Some Like It Hot episode. They brought Firestar from the cartoon into the comics in her own miniseries, which her main antagonist was Emma Frost, and by the end of it, she was given the choice to either join the New Mutants or the Hellions, and she chose neither.
She walked away.
So it's another fire character that fits in there.
Well, speaking about fire characters that walk away, at the end of Giant Size X-Men, when they were officially offered to join and stay at the X-Mansion and become actual X-Men, not just help rescue them, Sunfire turned them down.
Yeah, we talked about that on the fire episode.
Okay.
We talked about that on the fire episode. Something Like It Hot. So as always, super cool. I love to draw connections. Like, my brain exists as one of those boards you see in detectives with a string. That's kind of how I see these things. Like, yes. I love those strings.
Yeah, but you know how in the detective shows the strings are color coordinated? His aren't.
But they're colored.
Oh my God.
No. Speaking of mutants that were offered positions at the Xavier Institute or on the team of the X-Men, and because this will tie in later, there is a character named Dr. Cecilia
Reese.
Reyes,
yes.
Sorry, it's one of those things, so you know how like you read something and you don't know how to pronounce it
until you hear it.
And so for years as a kid growing up reading the name Reyes, I thought it said Reese. Because I'm not kidding, there was a Star Wars alien named Reese, and it's spelt the same way. But it was pronounced Reese because he had 3 eyes, and it was a play on the name 3 Eyes, but they called him Reese.
That's silly.
Yeah.
And so when I read the name Reyes in the comic book, my brain says Reese. So I say it wrong.
And so she was a doctor. she was actually a trauma surgeon. So she worked at the local ER. And when I forget what the whole issue was, but at one point she was offered a position with the X-Men, and she turned Xavier down, asked him to keep her secret. She didn't want the world to know she was a mutant because she worked in an ER. She didn't want her presence putting people in danger. Well, of course, then you've got the Extinction Agenda. Then you've got the Sentinels.
The Extinction Agenda, that's the next thing I want to talk about.
The freaking Sentinels attacked the ER, outing her, of course, because, she's why they're there, because, Sentinels detect mutants, and,
So when it comes to, this will be my last major input for the comic books, and feel free to add anything else. The really most important culmination of the New Mutants was the first time, even though the characters appeared in each other's books and they always had this tertiary existence, one of the very first major Marvel crossover storylines after Secret Wars, after the popularity of Secret Wars, is once X-Men was established, and it was no longer, it was right before they created the adjectiveless X-Men. So Uncanny X-Men, New Mutants, and X-Factor had this major crossover using all the teams at once. And that was the Extinction Agenda.
You got all of your X's.
And you get the characters Richter and Boom Boom get trapped on the island with Jubilee. That's their first team up. They bring back Iceman to the island. Iceman and Beast are infiltrating it.
With the Extinction Agenda, you get to bring back a lot of that animosity, because the New Mutants / X-Force at this point have just found out that the X-Men are alive because they've just come home. Of course, before they've died and everything, the mansion had been destroyed. They decided not to rebuild. Anyways, they have a couple of internal arguments because Cable has a well-oiled machine going with X-Force. They know their responsibilities. He doesn't have to tell them, hey, make sure you're doing this, because he's drilled it into them. And one of the first internal conflicts between them is Storm has just come back, but she had dealt with the Orphan Maker, and so she was in a child's body.
So she got turned into a kid.
So she's in a child's body. So they're in the danger room testing her limits, which, of course, you have Jean there helping her test her limits and everything. And, well, the New Mutants X-Force, they come banging on the door all upset because they're supposed to be using the danger room right now. And, so eventually someone's going, well, you know what? We reviewed the schedule, and there was nothing scheduled for right now. That's why we did it. And Cable's like, well, my team doesn't need a Mickey Mouse schedule because they know their responsibility. To which Storm's like, yes, but you're not the only one in-house. Your team needs to be able to work with our team.
I mean, fair.
And also going back to the kids being upset because they weren't being treated like adults, Xavier kind of benched them in a way. Then they just turn right back around and come back. And now the main X-Men team, and this is before Generation X, the main X-Men team has both a young Storm who's been reverted to a kid and Jubilee. So that didn't go well when they had interacted either.
Well, no, the X-Force didn't meet Jubilee until Genosha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, literally, until they were on the island of Genosha.
But they brought her back, and she wasn't on a kid's
team. Yeah,
she was on an adult team.
Yes, but that's because she was Wolverine's sidekick.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes it okay.
Yeah, no,
Wolverine's protege.
I don't like Wolverine. Not the point, though.
And how nobody else points out how creepy it is that he's had a minimum of 3 young girl proteges.
There was Kitty Pryde. There was, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think his daughter counts. She could be number 4.
X-23.
Yeah, she could count, but I don't.
Yeah.
Actually, he actually kind of refused to help her
because she was a clone of him.
She was a clone. He didn't like her.
That was a violation as far as he was concerned.
Yeah.
Which, with everything else, that was what tipped the scale.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But
it's nice to know Wolverine has his limits.
Right. But train of thought.
Comics.
Well, yes, I know that. Extinction Agenda. So now this is also where they so okay. There's something to be said first. Before Extinction Agenda, at the end of Madeline's run as the Goblin Queen, which actually tied into the Dark Phoenix episode last year, Havoc went missing.
Okay.
No one knew what happened to him.
That's right.
So after they defeated Madeline and she was no longer the Goblin Queen, they were all put through the Siege Perilous, and the X-Men, this was one of the times the X-Men all disappeared.
You're throwing out things that they don't know that we can't throw in restaurants.
But in the Extinction Agenda, Havoc has shown up on the side of the bad guys.
Right.
He's working with the Genosians. And the thing is with the Genosians is the only good mutant is one that's had their brain completely wiped and reprogrammed, and they're slaves that are completely docile, regardless of their level of power.
Just to lay down the quick and dirty, the whole Extinction Agenda storyline has to do with the sovereign nation of Genosha, which is an island nation that has been reprogramming and brainwashing mutants into a slave race that they believe is their right to use as a national resource. And the U.S. government does not want to get involved because they don't want to cause a war, and so the X-Men have to go in there and basically, cut that crap out.
Well, not really.
Yes, really, it's a political thing. I read that book like 3 times.
Okay. What started that is the X-Men ended up rescuing a couple of mutants from Genosha.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah, and
the Genosians wanted their property back. And so they attacked the X-Men. Well, you are correct. The American government at this point is going, well, we disavow their existence, which is kind of Beast's fault. So Walter.
I know. We want to streamline this.
And at one point, She-Hulk actually petitions to go over there to represent the X-Men to try in legal proceedings.
For those of you at home that don't know, She-Hulk's a lawyer.
Yes, She-Hulk is a lawyer. Now, of course, at that point, one of the fun things about She-Hulk is she's She-Hulk. She stays She-Hulk. She almost never reverts to her normal form because she has perfect control over her powers at that time, and she loves it. So of course, Genosha's going, no, we're not having her come over here because she's not qualified because she hasn't passed the Genosian bar.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with the fact that she's like 6 something and green.
She's like 7 something.
Is she?
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, it turns into the whole thing where you get Boom Boom and Richter having to rely on Jubilee while Wolverine and Psylocke, who of course confuses everyone because this is when the rest of the X-Men get to meet Asian Psylocke.
Well, I think we've really gone way off course.
Yeah. No, we're talking
New Mutants.
I tried.
It's kind of hard.
It's
hard to explain.
I know.
When you start talking about one of the X-Men family thing.
This is why I rely on y'all to help me stay focused.
That's what I told you guys. Connected tissue.
The main thing I wanted to talk about was the new Mutants movie.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's like the stuff you guys have been sitting here waiting for.
Right. This is where we throw out the spoiler warning.
Yes.
We will do our best not to completely ruin the movie, but we're talking about the movie.
We're talking about the movie.
It's going to be impossible not to spoil it. But I will say that I think that all the actors did an amazing job with these characters.
They did an exceptional job.
Well casted.
Very much so.
I think that I very much want to see a sequel. I want to see that it was supposed to be like a trilogy.
Yeah, originally the concept was a trilogy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after the review.
But I definitely want to see more of this. I think that they did go with a horror type feel, but I think that they
and it worked very well.
I think that they could have gone further with it.
Oh yes, they really could have.
Especially because it was an isolation story.
Yeah.
Where you don't have much of an outside cast. You literally only have the 5 kids and the 1 adult.
Yeah.
In the entirety of the movie. But it's so well done, and I think that's one of the interesting things about it is because it diverges enough from the original X-Men movies in that it's more about interpersonal relationships. And you get more of that close-up one-on-one, and for better or for worse, between the characters. So it's actually really good character studies on them as well. You get pieces in the other X-Men movies of what it actually means to these characters to be dealing with these powers. But in New Mutants, you focus solely on that, and it really adds to the psychological aspects of it.
In the X-Men movies, even when they changed the title from X-Men to X-Men First Class, you've got people that have already understood their powers, with the exception of when they introduced Cyclops in the X-Men First Class movies. Then I won't go into that right now.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's also like, for example, I think that I think that this follows the formula that a lot of the great Marvel movies make, which is don't make it just a superhero movie.
Yes.
Go with a genre.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I think that Ant-Man is great because it's
The
a heist.
Yeah.
It's a heist film, yes.
But with superheroes. I think that
Winter Soldier.
Captain America is
political thriller, yeah.
Because it's
a war movie.
Propaganda film.
And part 2 is a political thriller.
And I think that those are what makes those films so good.
Yes. Very much so.
And because it's not just, here these people have powers, let's have fun. It's more
nuanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, that's why this one worked, is because it had its own.
And it was a horror thing. And as I said, I think they could have gone further and it would have been even better. But I think that it got toned down.
After multiple editings?
Possible. But I think that the characters did amazing. I think that there were several spoilery things in there that were just absolutely amazing. I loved the fact they included Lockheed.
Yes. So, first off, we were going to talk about the bear.
Oh, the Demon Bear.
So they actually do follow with the Demon Bear trilogy as the basis of their core story. So that's the
because Danny and a lot of the mutants, they haven't really learned their powers. Danny especially has no idea when she's first picked up that she's a mutant.
Yeah, and that's actually the thing through the course of the movie is trying to figure out what she's capable of.
Yeah, what is her power?
But it's not just that they don't know how to use their powers; they're still dealing with the psychological drawbacks and damage of having powers.
Of how what happened to them when their powers manifested.
Yeah.
So that basically it lends to a lot of fear and anxiety, which is the perfect brewing pot for a horror thing.
Yeah.
So and the Demon Bear storyline, do we want to tell them what that is?
Well, basically, Danny was raised with Native American beliefs, and her father told her the story about, everyone has a bear, two bears inside of them. They have a good bear and a demon bear, and they grow depending on what you feed them. So if you fear a lot and all that kind of stuff, you're feeding the demon bear. And obviously, because of the situation that she's in this movie, she's very scared. She doesn't know what's going on, so she's feeding the demon bear.
And her powers are...
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Demon Bear in the comic books versus Demon Bear in the movie are not the same.
Not
because...
Really. But, I mean, there's that kernel.
Yeah.
So like, Donnie Moonstar, her power is psychic in nature. She has the ability to create, to manifest people's strong emotions. Yeah. However, when it first starts, it's negative because, again, we're in this situation where they're afraid and they're scared and everything. So she's unknowingly bringing their traumas and their fears to life.
Yeah.
Including her own, which is the Demon Bear. Because she's her all of her anxiety and fear of her having the powers, accidentally killing her family and everything. That's why the bear becomes like the main thing. And so it's an interesting aspect in the movie version of it that they're not just fighting some actual villain. They're fighting this abstract thing that is essentially one of their own creations.
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good twist.
I love it because you get insight into why Illyana is the way she is in the movie.
Mean.
You get insight into what happened to Roberto, why he puts on that brave face and he throws out all that bravado that he throws out.
Yeah.
What happened to Rain? What happened to Cannonball?
Yeah.
Right. It's exploring their traumas and how to deal with them.
Exactly. It's great stuff.
Yeah, obviously I think that they really toned down a lot of stuff with Illyana because they didn't have time to really go into everything that have to go. So they just kind of hinted at something that could have happened even in Russia.
As far as I'm concerned, her powers have always been kind of like wiggy woggy for me.
Okay.
They're too loosely defined in the comic book.
So they're not.
School us.
Okay. As a mutant, Illyana's mutant power, Illyana is Majik, Illyana's mutant power is the creation of teleportation stepping discs. That is her only mutant power.
Which kind of sounds...
She's a teleporter.
Yeah.
But when she was kidnapped by Belasco into Limbo, she learned black magic. He stole portions, and yes, eventually she even learns white magic. But he stole portions of her soul, which is what she ends up using to create her soul sword. So, Illyana's mutant is a teleporter, but it is compounded by her time in Limbo with magic. So, her powers are less ill-defined.
Which is where the armored hand comes from.
Yes.
The armored arm comes from magic.
Yes.
Which is why I think it's a little bit confusing in the movie, because, I mean, that doesn't feel like a mutant power, and so they never really explain.
They never address it.
They're like, why does she have this magic arm?
Where does the arm of the sword come from?
That's not her power.
They never explain it. But, you know, I'm okay with that, because if we had gotten a trilogy, I imagine they would have at some point addressed
that. That was what I was going to say. If anything, the second movie would have had to be the Limbo Belasco story.
You know.
If you're keeping with
especially
the
keeping with
the horror,
especially if you're
keeping with the horror elements.
Either that or Mojo.
Or Mojo, but Mojo's halfway between horror and sci-fi.
You know what? I feel like the way to go with the movie we just had would have been the Limbo and Belasco would have been a good thing. Her having to go reclaim or whatever to put Limbo right, and at the end of that, when she opens a portal for wherever they're going to go next,
they get dropped off in Mojoverse.
The end of that, you find them plopped on the ground of a studio in Mojoverse, and then do Mojoverse for the third one.
Yeah. I kind of feel like that one. So
that would have been amazing.
One of our favorite little end things on the New Mutants movie was Lockheed. Lockheed is a sentient alien dragon that belongs to Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat. And at various points in time when she has been out of commission,
Kitty and Majik share that they view themselves as sisters. So when Kitty has been out of commission or not able to take care of Lockheed, Illyana takes care of Lockheed. Now, the reverse has actually also been true particularly when Shadowcat was on the Team Excalibur with Nightcrawler and all them. At one point, they find a mysterious sword stuck in a stone at the lighthouse base of Excalibur. It turns out Shadowcat's the only one who could draw it, and not because of her phasing powers, but when she drew it, guess what also appeared on her arm? Majik's armor.
So Majik left her this sword.
Soul sword. So Kitty has been able to use Majik's soul sword, and Majik watches Lockheed when Kitty can't.
So in the movie,
Lockheed is amazing.
In the movie, it's a kind of cute little insight thing. They make Lockheed more of Illyana's psychological support.
Yeah.
Animal.
Support dragon.
At first we all thought it was just going to be the puppet, which was like a little nod. She's got this puppet as her
little sock puppet.
It's a sock puppet dragon, and it was her security blanket basically. So she has the sock puppet security blanket, and we all thought, okay.
It really was kind of weird because she was like such a.
She didn't seem like the character that would need it.
No, not even. She didn't seem like she would need it, and she was like too tough for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she would even like.
She would have conversations with.
My feeling is that she put on the air being too tough for it, but she used it in an ironic way.
Yes.
I think it was meant to be like she's like I'm tough and I've got a puppet. Say something.
Say something about it.
That kind of thing. That's kind of how I felt with it.
I thought that was going to be the little, her calling Lockheed.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little bit that they did.
Right, and then you actually,
to Lockheed, and then all of a sudden you actually see.
So one of the things I enjoyed talking about, like the virtual SCC panels and everything, was the little promos that started showing up.
Oh, the SCC.
And one of my favorites was Macy Williams, and her promo for the New Mutants that most recently showed up, and she's going. And I had the chance to work, with Lockheed, best dragon I've ever worked with. Yes, I said it. I loved that. Because if you don't know, Macy Williams, who plays Renee Wolfsbane, is of course from Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Second Game of Thrones.
Second Game of Thrones alumni to get a Marvel post.
Because Sophie Turner, of course, was Phoenix. So we'll be talking about that in this episode too.
Yeah.
At the end, our bonus.
Now, the San Diego Comic-Con panel, one of the things that was so funny about that is they, once again, re-released the trailer for New Mutants going, we promise, it is actually coming out. And the funny thing is at the end of that trailer, try finding that trailer now, it's like impossible for some reason. At the end of that trailer, the release date.
They wrote the original release
date. They wrote the original release date,
scratch it out.
Next one, scratch it out. Next one, scratch it out.
And then they get to the next one. Maybe? Hopefully? Question mark?
So they really ran with the joke of, yes, we know we've been telling you this is coming out for a while.
So for those of you who don't know, that this movie has actually been in the can for a while and reworked a couple of times because it's a victim of the Disney merger.
Yeah.
Disney-Fox merger.
Well, that's not entirely true. What happened was this Fox were scared of the horror elements. And so they wanted to retool it to make it funny. And Disney got a hold of it after the Fox, and they said, there's nothing wrong with this film. It just needs to go out.
Yeah.
And so so they released it without many major edits from what I understand.
Okay.
Because Fox was going to heavily edit, and they were wanting to come back and do reshoots and stuff like that.
Because they were afraid that it wouldn't get the same audience.
Scary. Yeah. But I
think it wasn't scary mild. I mean, it wasn't really that scary.
It was more of a psychological drama than a horror, but it still had horror elements. And
I mean,
I agree. It could have been a lot scarier.
Yeah, and I think that would have actually been better if it was scarier.
Right, it's one of those.
And I'm not a real big horror fan, but I think that this movie would
maybe for young kids it would have been scary.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, the scariest bits is that there's maybe like a jump scare and some blood. It was pretty mild. Like they could have made it much worse.
Ileana's nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have made it much worse.
Yeah.
It's like, because the monsters that were chasing her were probably the most unsettling.
Yeah.
So the amusing thing I find about this is the non-comic book people or aficionados, just the movie, those that are familiar with the X-Men movies, might have thought, well, this is the first time that we've ever heard of the New Mutants. However, the New Mutants are so far back and so ingrained into the wider X-Men mythos that you've actually seen influences from their comic books in movies that you probably weren't aware of. So we're going to talk real quick about their connections to other X-Men franchise movies. The first one is it's a little teeny tidbit one, but I find it very interesting. In the first X-Men movie, if anybody recalls it, when Iceman Bobby Drake is showing off to Marie, aka Rogue, in the classroom, there's a rival student who is creating fire, and Storm, the teacher, calls him by his name, says, "Cut it out, John," basically. For those of you who didn't catch it earlier, John Russell Collins was the full name of Rusty Collins, who was also known as Fire Fist. Fire Fist, we mentioned, was a transplant from the X Factor to the New Mutants team and one of the first linchpins in the animosity between the two. However, by the second movie, the studios decided that they needed more Brotherhood characters. So they retweaked their Fire character. Again, like I said, lots of Fire mutants. They retweaked their Fire character and actually transitioned him into Pyro. Pyro's name is not John, but they kept the name John. And instead of him becoming Fire Fist Rusty Collins, like he was originally going to be, he ended up becoming Pyro.
Yeah.
They even changed the actor.
Now, one of the interesting things about that is Rusty Collins was
fire.
a fire starter. He could create fire. Whereas Pyro is just a pyrokinetic. He can control fire. Now, I was actually re-looking at something because we were having this discussion the other day while we were talking about setting up the show. And, Rusty in that scene in the first movie uses the fireball. He does not. When he does it, he reaches behind his back and he has a lighter.
Oh, did he have the lighter?
He has the lighter that he draws the fire from, that he creates the fireball from, that Iceman then freezes. So, they did not necessarily retool, they just recast it, but...
They kind of mushed the two together.
They kind of mushed the two together. because the actor that they got to play John in the first one looked very much like Rusty Collins from the comic books. He was younger, he was blonde, and the guy that they later slotted in to be him in the second movie to play Pyro looked nothing like the Rusty Collins from the comic books.
Because they wanted somebody that looked less clean cut. Somebody who looked more like, edgy.
Yeah. And so then
he shows up again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, instead of Rusty Collins, he becomes Pyro, which is another mutant who has.
Don't sell yourself short. You're a god among ants.
Right. So another mutant who has fire-related powers. In fact, we were talking about doing a sequel to the Hot Wings episode, talking about fire villains. So you might hear more about Pyro later down the line. But then we get into the next trilogy and Days of Future Past. Now, Days of Future Past had, they really wanted to diversify and put more mutants. Now that the general viewing public is familiar with mutants and their powers, they don't have to really explain much, which is the whole point of Stan Lee creating the mutant idea in the first place. It's like, let's find a way to have superpowers without having to always come to lose how to get the powers.
You had the Fantastic Four who were all exposed to radiation. You had Spider-Man exposed to radiation.
Hulk exposed to radiation.
Yeah, and so Stan Lee's eventually like, okay, we can't keep exposing everyone to radiation.
We need something.
We need something other to go. How do we explain their powers?
Technically speaking, Captain America was a combination
of
the
radiation
super solar and the Vita Ray radiation. So anyway, but yeah, so that's when the mutants came up to be, and so now
Captain America was before Marvel.
I know, but still. But now that you have the mutants, it's like, okay, now everybody knows they were just born this way. They were just born this way, okay? So when you get to Days of Future Past and they introduce more characters, it's like they don't really have to give them you don't have to give them an origin now.
It's one of those things, the characters they introduce in Days of Future Past, if you're an X-Men fan from the comic books, nothing wrong if you're an X-Men fan from the movies, I'm not downing on you, but in this case, if you're a fan from the X-Men comic books, hey, that's Sunspot. Hey, that's Warpath. Hey, that's Bishop.
Blink.
Wow, we're just not really going to utilize them. Okay.
And they're all dead.
They're all dead.
But,
again, we talked about Sunspot and another fire character. So Sunspot, from the New Mutants, makes his first live-action appearance in Days of Future Past. And he's obviously the fire one fighting in the opening scene. And the Native American-looking one is Warpath, who is, of course, we talked about, was Thunderbird's brother, and later addition to the New Mutants. So I think those are the only two New Mutants that were in that, though, right? The New Mutants was Sunspot and Warpath. So the Days of Future Past. Now, here's one that Bo disagrees with me. And I swear I read this at some point. I'm not sure, but this is my personal opinion. I may be completely off base here. But if you've ever seen the Fox show based on the X-Men called The Gifted.
Excellent show. Highly recommended.
Really good show. In fact, my personal opinion, it's the best X-Universe live-action adaptation I've ever watched. It's the most interesting, and it's really good. It is really good. And
they have a character on there named Eclipse.
Hold on. But the leader of...
Oh, yes,
the leader is the first live-action appearance of Warpath's older brother, Thunderbird. So Thunderbird, who of course died in Giant Size X-Men #1. This is a version of Thunderbird who lived, and he's the leader. And I really enjoyed The Gifted because, again, even though it has the premise that it's about this like white family, it's really a really good diverse team because the actual focus is on Thunderbird, Native American, Blink, who is Asian, and a new character who was originally meant to be Sunspot.
According to what he thinks he read.
He was meant to be Sunspot, but because of their transition and wanting to do a New Mutants movie, they actually changed him up. And instead of having, he still gets his powers from the sun, but instead of having fire power, he has light power. And they call him Eclipse. Who instead of being...
Which really doesn't make sense as a name for what his power base is.
It does. They did. He absorbs solar energy. And if you pay attention, things get dark around him. The lights dim around him. He's absorbing the light to create light.
I may have to rewatch that.
Rewatch it. Yeah, he makes things go dark around him and sucks up the light. He even does the whole, Harry Potter lighter kind of trick. He takes off the street lamps in one episode by absorbing the light. But... yeah, they switch him up, and he's a character named Eclipse. and instead of being Brazilian, he's Cuban, and he's still rich. That's why. But instead of him being rich, I don't know why Sunspot's family was rich. But in the
his father ran a Fortune 500 company in Brazil.
Well, Eclipse, instead, his family are Cuban mobsters, but they're still super rich.
I don't think Sunspot's family were criminally inclined.
Okay. So anyway, I really enjoyed that character, and but then we get in, and I loved Anna's like light bulb moment. We talk about the Deadpool movies. Deadpool. You want to tell them about the fun New Mutant characters in the first Deadpool?
In the first Deadpool?
And okay, warning, this might be a spoiler for Deadpool 3. We don't know because we don't know what's happening in Deadpool 3.
I genuinely hope so.
We're really severely hoping.
I hope we're right.
We're hoping we're right.
So are we talking about Copycat?
We're talking about Copycat.
We're talking about Copycat first.
So,
then we'll go to the other ones they know.
So,
Monica Baccarin, who is, of course, Wade Wilson's girlfriend.
Vanessa
is Copycat.
So Vanessa in the comic book is the real name of Copycat, because when Deadpool in the comic book first appeared, or his first stories, Copycat became his girlfriend. And ever since I saw the first Deadpool, I'm like, is this really Vanessa? And everybody who was speculating were hoping that she would end up getting the Copycat powers. She has not yet.
Yeah, if you heard the beginning of like when Deadpool started and they started casting people, like the first thing I heard is, oh, is that Copycat? Is that going to be Copycat? Is she going to get the Copycat powers? And I was like, what?
What is that?
And it's like, it was one of those like blips in time that came and went and no one thought about it again until you told me, and I was like, what?
I thought about it again when Deadpool 2 came out and they introduced Domino. Which, if you have not seen this movie, that's my favorite part of Deadpool 2 is Domino. She stole that entire movie.
She did, yeah, hands down.
Okay,
but to be fair, they had to get rid of everyone else.
So here's the thing that really irritated me with Deadpool 2, aside from Deadpool 2. I enjoyed the movies. Don't get me wrong.
Right?
Not a fan of Deadpool. The movie, I am a fan of Ryan Reynolds. The Deadpool movies were well done for what they are. I enjoyed them. I will watch them again. But on the subject of the New Mutants, one of the characters you get is Shatterstar. Now, one of the reasons personally I am not so upset with the inclusion of Shatterstar in the Deadpool 2 movie is because they literally use him as a throwaway character.
They killed them all.
And for
any of you
who've ever been to my LGBTQ superhero panel at any convention or watched one of our episodes and we talk about the kill your gays trope, this is one that actually kind of set a lot of the community off.
Yeah, because Shatterstar is one of our LGBTQ representatives at this time.
Actually, he's pansexual.
Well, yes, he is pansexual, but he's dating Richter.
That's on the
It's still on
the letters.
It's still in the letters.
It's still in the letters, right?
It's still there.
It's the plus.
It's in the plus.
Exactly.
The plus, yes.
But they throw him in there literally as a throwaway character, and to me it's very upsetting.
No, here's another thing about Shatterstar that really kind of blows my mind. It's because when they first announced him and the actor who plays him, and I hate that I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he is a very famous Asian martial artist. In fact, anybody who's seen Iron Fist, whenever Iron Fist originally came out, he was actually one of the actors who was rumored to be in the lead when they were wanting to direct. The whole political thing around Iron Fist being the white cultural appropriation kind of thing, and there was a really big push to make the star of Iron Fist an Asian actor. The actor who played Shatterstar was in the lead for that role, but he ended up on Iron Fist being the Drunken Master towards the end. If you ever saw towards the end of the season when he had to go through the gauntlet and he fought the Drunken Master. And the thing about him is he actually is a martial arts expert.
Yes.
And I can't remember the actor's name. He kind of had to fake it. And so it wasn't just the character, it was the actor. They get this actor who's a professional professional martial arts actor, and he doesn't even get to fight. So it's like a double it. There's no choreography. It's like, why even bother with somebody who's...
Why bother with a name like that if you're not going to use it?
Yeah.
Right?
So then you also get, again, back to New Mutants, you get Firefist. You get Rusty Collins.
We're not... Yeah, we're on part 2.
Yeah,
so then, of course, we get to part 2, and Domino, that's what makes me think that the third one is going to have some kind of conflict between Vanessa and Domino, and Vanessa getting her copycat powers, and I would really like to see her take her place like they did in her first appearance. That's what I think that would be a really good story.
It would be entertaining.
Anyway, but and then last but not least,
we had already talked about Rusty Collins, Rusty Collins in X-Men and X-Men 2.
Who could have been, but ended up being Pyro instead.
Yeah,
but this time they used him in Deadpool. Again, I'm not really happy with how they used him.
Yeah.
Because in the comic books, Rusty was a good kid.
Didn't Rusty get killed off?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Rusty was also killed off. He died in mission.
But with what's going on now, he's probably alive.
No, but I remember though. In Rusty Collins was actually the culmination, the validation of Professor X's fears of the young kids out in the field, because he ends up dying. Because there's even a later issue where there's a dream sequence where Professor X is dreaming about his utopian future in which Rusty is still alive. Because I like that alternate, because Rusty he's had some, his costume, if you see the pictures, is horrible. Just horrible.
It's not good.
I don't like it. But in this future, Rusty has a costume that looks like the Human Torch's, but instead of blue and white, it's orange and yellow, red and yellow.
Yes.
It looks really cool, and I like that because it's also a nod back to the original Human Torch. Yeah. So I remember Rusty Collins having that costume, and I always like that.
So yeah, I kind of took issue with how they used him in the Deadpool 2 movie also.
Yeah. I think that's because they'd already kind of, sort of, not used him in the original trilogy as Pyro, so they figured, he's a good throwaway. He's a good character to throw away like that.
Yeah, well, and for the Deadpool movie, it's like, basically they were having a have your cake and eat it too moment where it's like, okay, we want to integrate the X-Force into this, but we really just want it to be a Deadpool-centric story.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, they tried to intertwine everyone else in it, but it was one of those that wasn't about that.
Yeah,
so,
no, absolutely.
Here, really quick, New Mutants, did you like it or did you not like it?
I enjoyed
it.
Loved it.
I'm waiting for it to come out so that I can buy it.
Hope there's a trilogy. Hope that somehow it crosses over into the MCU proper.
Yeah.
And same thing with Deadpool. I hope to see Deadpool transitioned into X-Force. And maybe bring in. I mean, that's what I think. I think that somehow, if New Mutants and Deadpool get pulled into MCU, then I don't see any reason why the New Mutants can't mush in with the X-Force, because New Mutants became X-Force.
Yeah.
I will say that I don't know if I should talk about it or not, but some new Spider-Man news I just found out I'm super excited about, because it sounds like they're really starting to pay attention to some of the old feel of the old Spider-Man comics, where they're bringing in these characters that really mesh well with Spider-Man. And you don't think that they would, but Doctor Strange.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So that can set up for the multiverse kind of thing.
And so I'm really loving,
Okay. So
Yeah, and so I could see them doing a Spider-Man and Deadpool.
Well, and part of the speculation about them bringing in Doctor Strange for the new movie is reversing the thing
Spider-Verse.
Not reversing Spider-Verse. No, reversing the whole thing that pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah, I saw
exposing his identity.
I think it's just going to be at the very end, they're going to Dos Ex Machina it with a magical fix to his identity. That's what I think.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, they're going to have to yada yada their way out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it isn't like he just exposed it to the school or showed up at his house and was like, surprise!
I loved that they brought back J.K. Simmons to be...
I know.
be.
I know he doesn't. It doesn't fit.
I hated that they outed Spider-Man like that because first off, in the real world, he would be liable for so many lawsuits.
Endanger the minor.
That's not X-Men. So we have to. It's like right again. So we got 15 minutes left.
Yeah, that's okay because 10. Or actually, do you want 15 minutes or do you just?
I mean, I could probably do 15 minutes.
Alrighty.
So now we're gonna
have
go
a
segment.
That's our New Mutants review and history.
Go watch it.
Go watch it. Watch it multiple times.
We need that movie to show that
if your theater is safe.
Yeah,
go watch it if the theater is safe. We were lucky that our theaters were actually very well. Had taken lots of COVID precautions and were really up on the safety of it.
And if you're hesitant about going there, call them, talk to them, see what it is they have going on.
Yes.
It's like most of them have been very accommodating.
Extremely.
They need your patronage.
Yeah.
They need your patronage. Yes. Please go watch movies.
So that when this is over, there are still theaters to go to.
Yeah.
Because it's sounding about 50-50 right
now. Yeah. Unfortunately. All right. So about a year ago, I was unable to attend the episode, but Brad and I forget who else was on the show. I'm sorry.
I was
Robin.
Yeah.
Were you?
I don't know anymore.
No, it was Greg and Robin. It was Greg and Robin.
I think it was Greg and Robin.
It's so like everything's a
Brad, Greg, and
Watch
Robin.
it. It's a good episode.
It is a good episode. But we need to correct some information. All right. So Jean Grey, starting off with Jean Grey, of course, she made her first appearance in 63.
Yes. X-Men.
Yes, I know.
You're right.
I'm getting my notes. September 63. Now, long run is Marvel Girl, blah blah blah. So in issue of the X-Men 101, like a Phoenix from the Ashes is the name of the title. That is where the Phoenix saga starts. And so from issues 101 to 108 is Jean Grey becoming the Phoenix and the X-Men's first encounter with the Shi'ar helping Lilandra defeat her brother because he's trying to embrace the powers of the Macron crystal, which, if he does it wrong, will destroy the entire world, or the entire universe. If he does it right, well, we'll still destroy the entire universe. There's no win here. So that's where we first get the Shi'ar Empire. And then that was 76 to 77. Now, one of the things I like to note is the colors of her costumes. So when Jean Grey first became Phoenix, and Cyclops, in a couple of stories many years later, actually addresses this. When Jean first became Phoenix, she was in green and yellow, not green and gold. A lot of artists like to try and make it look like it's green and gold whenever they do it in modern times. So after they defeat the Kin, which is at the time the Emperor of the Shire, she takes the crystal into the heart of the sun, and she stays in the heart of the sun for a little bit, and then she got bored and came back, still as Phoenix. Then in 1980 is when you get the what is now known as the Dark Phoenix saga. So she was Phoenix for quite a while.
She was Phoenix on after the X-Force thing, right? X-Factor. She was Phoenix.
No. Well, she got Phoenix back at that point. No. We'll get there.
No. In X-Factor, she did not have the Phoenix Force, but she still called herself Phoenix.
No. X-Factor, she went by the name Marvel Girl. You really want to challenge me on this?
I know at one point she had
at one point, yes, she does go back to the name Phoenix.
Without
not
the
on
Phoenix powers.
We'll get there. So January of 1980 is when the story starts in Uncanny X-Men 129. And that's where we get the introduction of the Hellfire Club. That's where they first show up.
Who were not Victorian.
No.
They were Edwardian.
Well, yes, they were Edwardian. They were not Renaissance.
Okay, we said Renaissance.
In the original episode, he said they were dressed as Renaissance.
You were right. It was not
Renaissance. But they are dressed in Victorian Edwardian style clothes, and the club members are.
I wasn't sure when I said it. Like, I was about 80% sure.
Yeah,
so I hear someone say, yes, you're right, it was Edwardian. I'm like, oh,
no,
yes,
well, and we discussed that last night, so I could be sure. Because, of course,
and that's a mistake I should not make because I should know better. I should know better.
That's okay. It's hard to remember. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff to think about.
So now we're going to do some corrections. What did I get wrong?
He talks about the corruption of the Phoenix Force and everything. So, first of all, when Jean became Phoenix, in the original story arc, it is not a force of power in and of itself.
It wasn't meant to be.
It was not meant to be. It was, and I'll get to that retcon in a little bit. It was a natural progression of her powers.
Much like X3 Phoenix.
Right, where it just started.
X3 Phoenix wasn't a cosmic energy force. It was just...
It was the ultimate expression of her powers. Which, in X3, they never gave us the freaking Firebird.
I know, and they had so many good
opportunities. That really irritates me.
Which is sad, because at the end of X2, they show the
Firebird in the water. You get the Firebird flying through the water. And it's going, yay! He was so... I had one of those huge sodas. I just could not hold it anymore. He was so afraid that I had missed that scene. But coming back into the theater, I didn't want to go all the way back down. So I'm standing there going, Phoenix.
Right, it's there.
And then you have the best ultimate moment in X3 for that giant Firebird to shine over Alcatraz Island. What do we get? Squat.
Oh, I was about to say, what did we get?
Nothing.
I don't know anymore.
We got Wolverine having to be the one responsible for her death. Wolverine was not responsible for her death. I will get there.
We already covered that.
I will get there.
Right? We need feelings. It's a feelings day.
So,
come on.
You introduce the Hellfire.
Tell me how you feel.
You introduce the Hellfire Club. You bring back one of the Brotherhood mutants from back in the day. Mastermind, who is using his illusionary powers, and he's making himself look all handsome and dapper, and he is now being called Jason Wingard. Now,
wait, isn't Wingard in Logan?
Possibly. Yeah. But Mastermind's an illusionist. He casts illusions. Now,
Logan, I gotta say something about that.
Okay. Now, with the help of Emma Frost, who at the time was still just the White Queen, she had created a device that she called the Mind Trap. Basically, it allowed Mastermind to access White Queen's powers to not just cast the illusions, but to cast them directly into Jean's mind, causing a lot of confusion, to where she thought she was actually slipping back and forth through time to one of her ancestors. And it was during all this that, yes, she did get corrupted. She became the Hellfire Club Black Queen for like all of 5 seconds. Because then Mastermind tries having a duel with Cyclops on the psychic plane through Jean's mind, and Jean witnesses Mastermind killing Cyclops, which of course breaks Mastermind's control. Now, Jean Grey, they make their escape. She goes, you really want to see what power is, and she fries his mind, puts him into a coma for years. And they make their escape, but damage is done. She becomes Dark Phoenix. Now, one of the things with Dark Phoenix is that, he's over here.
Oh, cool. He knows.
Yes, I know.
He knows.
Okay. One of the things with Dark Phoenix that they later retconned that it wasn't Jean was because the editors felt what happened with her as Dark Phoenix was unforgivable. Because, as far as they're concerned, she commits genocide. No.
We discussed this in the episode.
The statement is, giving her a chance for redemption is like forgiving Hitler. Okay. Yeah. And we discussed this last night.
Yes.
It's not. Because Hitler, the Holocaust, was an intentional movement against. Dark Phoenix had nothing to do, had zero cares about the planet that gets wiped out. That's not even her goal.
Right.
She is feeding on the cosmic, on a star to fuel her cosmic power.
It's like an animalistic need
to
just feed.
She's a lioness hunting, you know, and so her eating the star, you know, I forget what movie it is they say it in, but it's like us stepping on an anthill in Africa.
Right.
It's not a malicious intention. She's not going there to wipe out a star system.
Yeah.
It happens. And Jean, for years, has issues dealing with that.
The trauma.
The trauma of that.
Yeah.
But in the end, everything said and done, she dies in September of 1980. Now, in the fight that kills her, she knows she is losing control of her powers again. Because they defeated her. They were barely able to defeat her, and Jean and Professor Xavier were able to tap down her powers so that she wouldn't go completely mad. Shire show up, sentence her to death, and Xavier pulls a stunt and challenges them to trial by combat. If the X-Men win, she's free to go. But the X-Men are not winning. She's starting to lose control of her power, but she is using as much of her power while she is in her weakened state to remain in a weakened state. Mm-hmm. And it is in that weakened state while she is distracted because she's talking to Cyclops, she is keeping herself unaware of her surroundings intentionally, that she activates a hidden weapon in the blue area of the moon and disintegrates herself. Mm-hmm. Now, this is where we get the Phoenix that never was. Because in a panel that never actually made it anywhere, you see Jean in a white and silver costume. And she even addresses, well, Phoenix was green, Dark Phoenix was red, so what does the white mean? Am I in heaven? Am I in hell? Where am I? And it leaves it right there of, where is she? So that's how the story of Phoenix originally ended. But the writers, the editors are going, we can't redeem her for genocide of an entire race. Okay, if it had been intentional, I completely 100% agree. But, so 3 years later, this goes to your Cyclops was a dick number one. Cyclops was not a dick in this case. There are other cases where he was. 3 years later, he meets Madeline Pryor, who is working for his grandparents in Alaska. They start to date. They have a romance.
Madeline Pryor, who looks identical to Jean Grey.
I'm getting there. Now,
not fast enough.
Madeline Pryor does bear a striking resemblance to Jean Grey, because you later find out she is a clone of Jean Grey. Mm-hmm. But through various stories, they actually address this in story of Cyclops asking her if she is Phoenix reborn, to which Madeline slugs him and runs off. They eventually talk about it and everything, and they resume their romance and eventually get married. So in 83, they meet in April, they get married in December. Whirlwind romance. What do you expect? It's comic books. They disappear for 2 years. You do not see Maddie and Cyclops again until 1985. So, that's when you find out that Madeline Pryor is pregnant with Scott's son. And they end up going and living with the X-Men. And unfortunately, Cyclops is away on a mission when Madeline goes into labor. So, still not a dick. He's doing his job, and he didn't know they were going into labor. Now, where Cyclops is a dick is he leaves in the middle of the night when he finds out that Jean is still alive. Okay. And they snuck her back in under the radar because this is where they retcon. Sorry, gotta get my notes. This is where they...
We're out of time.
Okay.
Yippee 9.
I kept trying to get you to there.
Well, in 86 is where they retcon that the Phoenix was not Jean, it was the Phoenix Force.
So, well, all right. So there's your wrap up on some of the a more tight reveal of the Phoenix story. Thank you for joining us on the Red Web. We're gonna hopefully see you. We're taking a break next week, or are we gonna be doing a?
We're taking a break.
We're taking a break next week, but come back here in 2 weeks, and we're gonna be doing
Universal Monsters.
Universal Monsters, the original. Our Halloween episode will be in 2 weeks, and that's on the 27th, correct?
Yeah.
So thank y'all for joining. Make sure you like and share, and tell your friends to watch. If you have any suggestions or input, please give them to us, and we really appreciate you watching us live on the Red Web.